I have to believe that I am. I've been given this opportunity. I've worked for the opportunity, and I have to take advantage of what I have.
August 10th, 2026, a Monday in New York. The US Open main draw is 14 days away. The grounds at Flushing Meadows are already filling with sponsor crews and hospitality tents rising behind Arthur Ashe. In Melbourne, it is the middle of the Australian winter. Rod Laver Arena is dark. The next Australian Open is 5 months away. Between those two cities, a short press release goes out from Marriott's Asia-Pacific office. It does not lead with a dollar figure. It does not announce contract length. It simply states that Alex Eala is now the face of Marriott Bonvoy's Tennis the World campaign for Asia-Pacific, excluding China, 10 days before the US Open, not 10 days after. That detail should stop you. The entire sports marketing industry is built on the opposite instinct. The industry waits. It signs the winner. It watches, the slam sees the trophy lift, then opens the checkbook. Marriott did not do that. Marriott moved early, and when a company of that size moves early on, a player ranked 20th in the world. The interesting question is not how much she was paid. The interesting question is what Marriott saw that the rest of the market had not yet priced in. That is what this video is about. Not the deal itself, the timing of the deal. Most coverage is treating this like any other sponsorship story. Famous player, famous brand, congratulations. That framing is easy and it fits the algorithm. It also misses what actually happened, and it misses it in a way that matters. If you want to understand where Eala's career is heading over the next 3 years rather than the next 3 weeks. Timing is the one element of a sports marketing deal that cannot be faked. Numbers, length, and perks can be negotiated and spun. Timing is a decision. Timing is a bet. Marriott placed its bet at a very specific moment for very specific reasons. Understanding those reasons reveals something about Eala's real market value that most coverage has not yet articulated. Quick grounding for anyone arriving late. Alex Eala is a 21-year-old professional from the Philippines. She turned pro in 2020, spent formative years at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, and until this summer was a top 50 player with a devoted following and a growing reputation. In roughly 6 weeks in mid-2026, 3 things changed her category. At Wimbledon, she beat defending champion Iga Świątek in the 3rd round on center court. At the DC Open in early August, she produced the most disruptive week of her career, beating Jessica Pegula, Elina Svitolina, and Naomi Osaka on the way to her first WTA singles title, the first ever won by a Filipino player on the main tour. On August 4th, the rankings updated and she stood at world number 20, a career high and the highest ranking any Filipino has held on either tour. That is the player Marriott signed 6 days later. Now the story becomes strange. Paradox 1. If Marriott wanted a US Open bounce, if the goal was to attach the brand to whatever Eala was about to do at Flushing Meadows, the calendar makes no sense. You do not announce your new ambassador 10 days before her slam. You announce her at the slam or after it, when the highlight package already exists and the brand can ride the momentum. Every advertising executive who has built a media plan around a live sports event knows this. Marriott's competitors know this. Marriott did the opposite. They signed her when her most recent result was a 4th-round loss to Belinda Bencic in Toronto, a loss that came in front of a sold-out night session where 3,100 tickets had cleared in under 30 minutes. The moment her name appeared on that court, Marriott moved before the US Open, not after. That is a choice. Paradox. 2. The campaign is called Tennis the World. Its anchor is not the US Open, not Wimbledon, not Roland Garros. It is the Australian Open, where Marriott Bonvoy is entering its 6th consecutive year as official hotel partner, and where the 2027 edition runs from January 11th to 31st. The press release is explicit. Marriott Bonvoy members receive early access to Australian Open 2027 tickets. That is the deliverable. So the world number 20 at the peak of her US Open buildup has been signed to promote a tournament on the other side of the planet, 5 months into the future. Why Paradox 3? Marriott did not sign her for Asia Pacific. They signed her for Asia Pacific, excluding China. The carve-out is in the headline. China is, by any reasonable measure, the single largest tennis market in Asia. Biggest tournament calendar, biggest sponsorship spend, biggest television audience, an entire WTA swing built around Chinese venues. If you sign a tennis ambassador for Asia Pacific, the default is to include China. Marriott chose not to. They drew a line around Southeast Asia, South Asia, Oceania, Japan, and Korea, and said this is her region. Why exclude the biggest market? Paradox 4. The announcement contains no dollar figure and no personal perk for Eala. Numbers have circulated 2 million a year, unlimited first-class flights, various inflated totals. None of those figures appear in Marriott's press release, in the Sports Business Journal write-up, or on the official Tennis the World page. What the release actually discloses is a benefit for members, Australian Open presale access, and Marriott Bonvoy Moments exclusive experiences. The deal is not structured primarily around Alex Eala, the athlete. It is structured around Marriott Bonvoy, the loyalty program. Why does Marriott want its members near her, rather than the other way around? Most people have been carrying the same assumption. Marriott signed Eala because she is a rising tennis player. That is the default story. Player becomes visible. Brand arrives. Brand pays athlete to wear the logo. Endorsement, the deal exists to attach the brand to the athlete. That story is the wrong one here. Here is what actually happened. Marriott did not sign Alex Eala primarily because she is a tennis player. Marriott signed her because she is the most credible sports marketing entry point into a region the company has decided is the future of its loyalty program. The tennis is the delivery mechanism. She is the delivery mechanism. The product being sold is Marriott Bonvoy membership in Southeast Asia, targeted at a customer base that Marriott's own research has identified as loyalty, hungry, travel hungry, and currently underowned by competitors. That is why they moved before the US Open. That is why they anchored the campaign to Melbourne rather than New York. That is why they carved out China. And that is why the visible perk in the announcement is for members, not for her. She is not the primary audience of this deal. The Marriott Bonvoy member is the audience. Eala is the face chosen to speak to that audience. Once you see it that way, the 4 paradoxes stop being paradoxes and become strategy proof. One is the timing itself and the way it breaks with what the industry calls the Raducanu template. In September 2021, Emma Raducanu won the US Open as a qualifier. In the weeks that followed, she signed roughly a dozen major sponsors at post-slam pricing. The consensus critique that has followed for years is not that she signed too many deals. It is that she signed them at the top of the market at prices inflated by a single tournament result, in a way that made the associations harder to sustain when her ranking fluctuated. Coverage of the Eala Marriott announcement has already drawn the comparison. Marriott moved before Eala's US Open. That is not coincidence. It is a company that has read the Raducanu case study and chosen the opposite side of the trade sign, her at number 20, not after a potential breakthrough pricing spike sign, her before slam run inflation sign, her as a market bet, not a pure momentum bet. You cannot fake that decision. It is on the calendar. Proof. 2 is the language Marriott used. The release quotes John Tomey, Chief Commercial Officer for the Asia-Pacific region, excluding China. In sponsorship announcements, the operative sentence is the one that reveals strategy. Tomey said, Eala embodies what Marriott Bonvoy stands for. He called her authentic and inspiring. Then came the key phrase, proudly connected to the region we serve. Not future Grand Slam champion. Not language about tennis achievement. The operative sentence is about the region, about her connection to the region. Marriott serves executives at that level do not choose those words by accident. The tennis is the entry point, the region is the point, and the region is the Asia-Pacific market excluding China that Marriott has publicly identified as the growth engine of its loyalty program for the next decade. Proof 3 is the market data, and it lines up with unusual precision. Earlier in 2026, Marriott Bonvoy released its loyalty trends report for the Asia-Pacific region excluding China, the exact same regional definition used in the Eala announcement. The report is public. It states that 89% of travelers across that region already participate in at least one loyalty program. In Vietnam, the figure is 96%. Southeast Asia is not a region where loyalty programs are being introduced. It is a region where they are already saturated, and where whoever wins the emotional attachment of the traveler wins the next 15 years of business. Marriott has stated in its own language that this is the ground on which the future of Marriott Bonvoy will be contested, and they signed the 21-year-old Filipino player ranked 20 in the world 10 days before her US Open to be their face in that contest. Put the pieces together. Sign before the slam, so the pricing has not reset. Sign for a region carved out to match the exact geography defined in your own research. Sign a face who is specifically connected to Southeast Asia, a Filipino from a country in the middle of that map, with a diaspora that spans the geographies where the loyalty data shows the largest opportunity. Anchor the campaign to the Australian Open because it is the closest slam to Southeast Asia by flight time and time zone. Structure the deal. So the core deliverable Australian Open 2027 pre-sale is a member benefit, meaning every time an Asia-Pacific traveler wants priority access to see Eala play the slam nearest to them, they engage with Marriott Bonvoy. That is not a conventional sponsorship, that is a customer acquisition funnel with a tennis player at the top of it. And it explains in one sentence every one of the four paradoxes. It is easy in a video like this to make the strategy sound purely instrumental. It is not. Companies do not build long-term acquisition funnels around athletes whose value they expect to fade. They place the funnel around the person they believe will still be the answer. 5 years. From now, Marriott looked at Alex Eala at number 2010 days before the US Open and decided she was that person. That is a serious commercial bet. A few honest limits. This reframe does not prove Marriott foresaw a specific US Open result. What actually happened was a solid but not headline-making run, a 3-set win over 14th seed. Clara Towson in the first round saving break points and recovering from 51 down in the deciding tiebreak, followed by a second-round loss. If Marriott had waited 2 weeks, they would have signed her at essentially the same market value. The intelligence of the timing was not clairvoyance about one tournament. It was the decision not to depend on one tournament. This also does not prove she will remain at number 20. Rankings move. Tennis is difficult on young players carrying the expectations of a country and a growing regional audience. There will be more losses this fall. She has said as much herself, speaking after Washington about growth being the only way forward and about wanting to earn every next result. Finally, the specific dollar value of the contract is not public numbers. Circulating on social platforms are unconfirmed. Sports Business Journal did not publish a figure. Marriott did not publish one. Anyone quoting a precise annual amount or list of perks right now is guessing. The absence of a disclosed number does not change the strategic story. The story is the timing, the regional carve-out, the loyalty, data alignment, and the customer acquisition structure. The eventual number when it surfaces will be a footnote. Where does that leave us? It leaves us with a clearer picture of the room. Alex Eala is now standing in, not a Grand Slam trophy room, not a locker room, a conference room in which a chief commercial officer of a hotel group with thousands of properties looks at market data for a region of hundreds of millions of people, looks at a Filipino tennis player ranked 20 in the world, and decides those two things belong on the same slide. She is in that room now. Marriott put her there. When a company operating at that scale identifies a single athlete as its entry point into its most important growth region, adjacent categories, notice airlines, notice fashion houses, notice financial services, notice consumer electronics, notice. This is exactly the sequence that followed Naomi Osaka after her first major, and that has followed a small number of other players whose ceilings proved commercial as much as athletic. Marriott moving early is a signal to that entire market that Eala has been priced. The next deal she signs will be shaped by the existence of this one. The one after that will be shaped by both. That is how these things stack. When you next see her name announced as an ambassador for something else, remember that the shape of that future deal was set in August 2026 when a hotel company decided not to wait, and when you next watch her walk onto a night session court in a city that is not hers and the tickets are Gone in half an hour. Remember the Toronto detail, 3,100 seats cleared in under 30 minutes? Marriott saw that number too. Marriott saw the room she was walking into, and Marriott chose to be in the room with her before anyone else made the same choice. That is the story. Not the money, the company she keeps now. If this reframe changed how you are thinking about the deal, tell me in the comments. Do you think the next major brand that signs her waits for a slam result or moves early the way Marriott did? I read the comments. I want to know how you are reading this. Subscribe if you have not already. The next chapter of this commercial story, whichever brand goes second, is coming, and we will cover it here. Tennis Diaries, where the ones who notice the timing stay until the next brand moves.